Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. My goodness. Like, have you ever had a night where everything goes wrong? My Lord. But I'm so glad to see that you guys are here. Let me kind of get set up on my end because I just ran down the steps to jump on here. My YouTube account kicked me out immediately as soon as I signed on again, and I realized it had to do with my security system that I have on my laptop because I have patient records on my laptop. And so it kicked me out. So that's why I am 10 minutes past when I said I was going to be on here. But it's really good to see you guys. It has been one of those nights. I'll briefly just update you. Let me make sure my camera is focused. I think that looks okay. Yeah. Let me just give you just a brief rundown of what happened tonight. Usually, guys, for those of you who are new, yes, you're welcome, Curtis. I really appreciate you for saying that. Thank you. On Saturdays, I'm usually not anytime past 8:30 doing YouTube, but my mom fell sick shortly before I got on. And I'm telling you, shortly before I got on tonight, everything was okay. And we were laughing and we were talking and she's doing well. And we were watching Judge Judy because that's our favorite show. And next thing I know, I come downstairs to my downstairs office here. And, I got this internal sense that said, go check on her because she was sweating profusely. And so I went back up to check on her and she couldn't talk for a little bit. She couldn't really make sense or heads or tails of anything. And the scary part is she started vomiting. And you know what I'm thinking as a healthcare provider, I'm thinking a heart attack, right? Or another stroke. And I'm like, oh my God, this can't be happening. But thank God for his guidance because I looked at my mom and I thought she may have taken something she shouldn't have taken. Wait a minute. So I said, Mom, what did you do today? And she went through the whole day. And then she finally gets to, I don't have it near me, but a GNC vitamin bottle. Are you ready for this, guys? And I said to her, Mom, did you take these vitamins without eating enough food? And you guys are free to laugh. Please do find this humorous. And she's like nodding, right? Because she was so sick, she couldn't talk. And I said to my brother, my younger brother's here, I said, I think it's the vitamins. And that's what it was. So she's doing a lot better. She's talking. She looks like herself again. And so the vomiting has stopped and all of that. So thank God. It's just one thing to the next. You know what I mean, guys? But you guys are so loving. Thank you so much for all the messages and everything that you responded to me with tonight. But let's jump in. All right, guys, I've held up enough time tonight. Let's talk about pathological liars, habitual liars, individuals who find lying to be as easy as chewing bubblegum, getting up the next day, going to work, So let's talk about the psychology of their mind. One of the things that I've learned over the course of my career, which has been about 16 years now, and working in a variety of contexts, what I have come to find is that there are multiple psychological elements to a person who finds it extraordinarily easy to try to piece things together and create a reality out of something that doesn't exist. And that's really what a lie is. It's piecing things together and creating a world and a reality that doesn't exist. And it's giving it life, right? And you're hoping that the person is decent enough, aware enough, self-aware enough, engaging enough, to say, I'm not going to say A, B, and C because I know that's not true. And I think we also kind of have within the inside of us, we have this internal sense of when somebody is lying to us. I know I do. I know you do. If it's a person that I'm counseling, if it's a person that I'm providing a consultation to, if it's a person who's in my family or if it's somebody that I'm dealing with in terms of an outsider, so a neighbor or maybe, strangers, I can kind of immediately want to believe what is being said, but then I recognize there's something about what I'm being told that doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. And so research in psychology says this, guys, that there is a blurring of ethical boundaries and principles with people who live a lie. People who live a lie, tell lies, engage in lying, telling habitually. And I'm going to break down the different kinds of liars tonight. These individuals don't have a clear, carved out road of morals and principles. And that is why it's so very easy for them to lie. Now, if we're thinking about, children or adolescents or young adults who lie, or maybe even grown adults. I know there's some grown adults who lie, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, you're too old to be lying and acting like this. You know what I mean? But, there are people who lie to get out of trouble, to maintain a self-image, to feel a certain way, to cause you to think of them in a certain way. They're problematic too, because they will lie for the heck of it. You can't trust them either. But what we're talking about tonight is the psychology of the mind that finds it very, very easy to lie. It is like chewing bubblegum for them. Research in psychology on pathological liars suggests that there is a complex mix of criminal thinking, skewed thinking. I'm going to put this in the chat box, and personality traits. Okay. So let me add that in here. There is a mix, a complex mix. Let me put that in the chat box. Complex mix of criminal behavior, criminal thinking plus, I was going to say lack of morals, but I'm not going to put that in there. I'm going to just say skewed thinking. Okay. Plus, so there's a complex mix of criminal thinking, skewed thinking, plus personality traits. And that's what we call habitual and pathological lying. There you go. A complex mix of criminal thinking, skewed perception of reality or skewed thought patterns, and personality traits. Can you imagine? Remember, we talked about cluster B personality traits yesterday. Can you imagine having a narcissistic individual or a sociopath, an antisocial personality who you're having a conversation with, and their criminal thinking includes, let me give you some examples of criminal thinking. So I'm going back to my criminal justice degree. All right, criminal thinking would be strategizing, manipulating, premeditating, confusing or causing confusion. There's some other terms. I'm losing it. Oh man, I had them for a second in my mind and they left. Criminal thinking, strategizing, manipulating, premeditating, confusing or causing confusion. I'm going to also add in here, I'm going to call it planned maneuvers or planned behavior, right? And the thing that we all know, denial. Criminals use it all the time. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. You didn't see right. That's not me on the camera. And you can put it up to their face, like the young man I told you about yesterday in my office, and I showed him the surveillance camera and I showed him the footage and I said, this is you going in my intern's lunch, pulling on the patient records lock, putting your ear to my office door. This is you. How am I supposed to see you? How am I supposed to think of you? What am I supposed to do with this? And he says to me, I don't know. That wasn't me. That's his attitude. Criminal thinking, right? Strategizing, manipulating, premeditating, causing confusion, planned maneuvers or behaviors, and denial. That is how they operate. So when you're thinking of pathological liars, you're thinking about habitual liars, you want to keep in mind it's a complex mix of criminal thinking, skewed thinking, personality traits. You have a person who's a narcissist, you have a person who is antisocial or a sociopath, and you start seeing all of those criminal behaviors, right? All of those ways that they can think that is criminal. You see them strategizing, you see them premeditating, you see them coming up with a plan, you see them calculating. That's a problem. So you've got a narcissist or a sociopath who is not only operating in criminal thinking, but they also have skewed thinking. And what's the skewed thinking? It's a skewed and twisted perception of reality. So they have a skewed or twisted perception of reality. And what does a pathological or habitual liar need to do in order to be believed? Well, sometimes they have to believe their own lies. Okay. So they believe their own lies, which, let me throw this out here, makes it feel very much like they're telling the truth. Why? Because they believe their own lies. Sometimes, and this is mainly with habitual liars. I'll break this down in a little bit to you. But habitual liars, they lie out of habit. And so because of that, in a sense, they train their own mind. And those continual lies that just keep them in a loop over and over. The liar's loop, we'll call it that, the liar's loop. And they continually lie over and over and over. They begin to digest the lie. I had a childhood friend like this. I'm going to share this with you. I had a childhood friend like this. We were friends between 9 and I'm going to say 13. Yeah, not my ages and her ages, 9 to 13. Somewhere around in there, between 9 to 13 years old, we were friends. And I trusted her. You know why I trusted her? She was my grandmother's. She was, how do I put this? She was the daughter of my grandmother's friend. And so they were Avon buddies. For those of you who know what Avon is, do you know what Avon is? Please tell me you know, because if you don't, I'm really going to feel over the age of 35. So they were Avon buddies, my friend's mother and my grandmother. And so they would go out after work almost every day, and they would go out and deliver their Avon. I thought it was the most interesting thing. And so I trusted her. I thought, oh, well, what could be wrong? She seems like a nice kid. I wasn't the kind of kid that was very sociable. I didn't open up to people. I read books and I got even more smarter, and I stayed in, and I traveled the nation with my family. And that's kind of where I was. But I opened the door to her because, again, she was the daughter of my grandmother's best friend, and they were work partners. So the more I started to play with her, we'd be jump roping and hula hooping and running up and down the road and playing tennis, playing golf from time to time. I would go to her parties, birthday parties. She would come to mine. One time my mom picked us up. We went to Chuck E. Cheese, for those of you who know Chuck E. Cheese. Back when arcades existed, my mom would drop us off at the arcades, and, we would have a great time. But here's where things went awry. Okay. I didn't realize that she was a pathological liar, but here's what she did. So one Saturday morning, I went over, knocked on her door. She came to the door. She says, "Are you ready to go?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." We were going to go play tennis. So my mom was, loading the trunk up with all the tennis balls and rackets. And I'm standing on the outside of the car, changing my shoes, trying to get ready. She's in the house. And okay, off my mom takes us, right? So we spent about 4 hours playing tennis. We're tired. We're exhausted. My mom is like, "Girls, get out of this car and go do something else, because I'm getting ready to go take a nap." My mom was so tired. And so she went home and showered. I went home and showered. We met each other back outside again, and we were just sitting there talking, looking at the sky. And she's telling me that she's been having a really hard time sleeping. And I asked her why. She's like, I don't know. I can't tell if it's this boy I like, or I don't know what it is. I said, well, you better get him out of your mind, because nobody's worth you losing sleep over. You know how kids talk, right? So she looks at me and she says, you know what, Tam? I says, yeah. She says, the neighbor next door the other day when we were outside. I said, yeah. She said, he pulled a gun out on me. I said, when? And she's like, the other day when you knocked on my door and you handed my mom the Avon. I says, yeah. She says, and as soon as you walked away, that guy next door pulled a gun out on me. And I said to her, I says, you weren't even outside. She's like, well, when you turned around to walk away, I came to the door to like shut the door and lock the door. Okay. And I'm somewhere in my inside, I'm thinking, this doesn't feel right. And I said to her, I don't remember seeing the neighbor even open his front door. She's like, you're not saying you don't believe me. I said, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's an old man who typically is very nice to all of us. And she says, well, you know how people can be. I says, yeah, well, I'm having a hard time with this. And she says to me, I'm going to have to tell my mom, and I'm going to have to tell my dad. And you know what I was thinking, guys? Oh, crap. Police, there's going to be accusations. She's going to say all kind of manner of evil against this old man. And I said, I'm sorry that this is not adding up for me, but I can't go along with this. And she says, well, some kind of friend you are. And she gets up, walks away angry, goes in our house, slams the door. And I go and I tell my mother and grandmother, and I told both of them at the time. I was probably, so we were friends between 9 and 13. So I might have been about 11 and a half or 12. And I said to my grandmother and my mom, that never happened. That never happened. Never happened. But to this girl, it was like clear flowing water for her to just come up with this lie. And if you want to know how it looks on Christmas Day, you should have been there with her, because there was so many police at that house that it looked like Christmas. Okay. And I felt terrible, but thank God, my mom and my grandmother took me out of that. I wasn't to be involved. And eventually the charges were not even sticking. Like, her story wasn't adding up. Mother's story didn't even exist. She didn't even know what happened. It was just a big mess. And so this young lady, who my mom was like, nope, wash your hands of her. She's trouble. Goodbye. We found out so many months later, my family and I, that she had become a juvenile delinquent. She was a pathological liar. She had lied about being assaulted again, and she had gone through a variety of issues with the law. And this young lady, to this day, I heard through the grapevine, still struggling. Why? Because every single thing she does has a lie attached to it. And I'm interested to see what you guys are saying about that. I see some of what you're saying. It's very sad, right? So I'm gonna put this in the chat box here, that they have a skewed or twisted perception of reality. They believe their own lies. And here's what they also do. They engage in habitual loops. Okay. Meaning it's not just one lie, but it's another, and it's another, and it's another, and another. And sometimes the first lie attempts to close the last lie. Does that make sense? So the first lie that goes out with a person who's a habitual liar, they have to prove that what they're saying is true. So they do any and everything they need to do to come out on the winning end. And it makes it really hard for people to recognize that's not truth. That's not truth at all. Unless you have really good intuition, right, guys? Then you can sense something about this is wrong. And that's what it was with me and her, my ex-friend. It was like, something about this doesn't feel right. And I can't be your friend anymore because this is just not okay. Research in psychology says this about pseudo-fantastica. Have you guys ever heard of that? Pseudo-fantastica. Pseudologia. I'm sorry. Pseudologia fantastica. Okay. That is pathological line in a different language. That's pathological line. So pseudologia fantastica is a pattern of pathological and habitual lying. Habitual lying is I'm lying so much that it's become a part of my repertoire of behaviors. And I'm lying so much that I do it even when I don't mean to. The lie goes out and I try to snatch it back in. But by the time I go to bring that lie back in, it's too late. Now I've got to try to cover. Now I've got to try to stretch this. Now I have to find some evidence that I'm telling the truth, right? So that's a habitual liar. A pathological liar is different. A pathological liar is a person who lies with or without intent and with or without reward. Habitual liar is in this habitual loop, right? It's this constant loop. And sometimes they don't even mean to lie, it just slips out. Habitual liars can also be dangerous because their first behavior is most likely going to be a lie, right? And it's going to be a lie that they can't pull back in even though they want to. You know, it's almost like, oh God, I said that. Why would I say that? I got to pull that back in. That's not true. You know, pathological liars are just as dangerous, if not worse, because what they do is sometimes they premeditate, sometimes they strategize. This is the criminal mind. Sometimes they manipulate. Sometimes they premeditate their steps from A to Z so that they can get what it is that they want. That is the sad part. There's often, for most people, this kind of cognitive dissonance when it comes to lying. There's this mental tension that makes it hard for most humans to lie. Why? Well, here's what happened. If there's a lie that's being told, a white lie, or we're trying to cover something up, we have a sense of guilt. We have a sense of sometimes remorse. There's mental tension that we call cognitive dissonance. And there's a mental tension between who we really are and what we've just done. So I'm going to put that here. So cognitive dissonance or mental tension, right? There is, hold on guys, bear with me. There is mental tension when, I'm just going to say, most people tell lies because a lie, I'm going to say, causes tension between who we really are versus the lie. So you're late for work. Your boss comes to you. You say, oh man, I'm so sorry I was late. I was in traffic. It was horrible. And then there was a car accident. And then I got down the tunnel and there was another car accident. And I was just idling and idling. And if I could have went a different way, I would have went a different way. Your boss may say, well, you told me you were stuck in traffic last week and the week before that and the week before that. And you may say, I know, maybe I need to stop going that route I keep going. I promise I'll be here on time tomorrow, boss. I promise. You go sit down at your desk, and here's where cognitive dissonance for most people kicks in. You sit there, you're at your desk trying to sign into your computer, you're ready to go, right? And all of a sudden you start thinking, why would you say that? Why would you lie? You should have just taken responsibility for your behavior. You know, why would you say that? And so then you start feeling like, you know, this tension between what you just said and what the reality of the situation is. You know, you overslept. because you were watching Saturday Night Live on Saturday night. You had a couple of drinks and you had an argument with your spouse and you got up late this morning because of your own doing, and now you're in trouble, right? And so that pause, that ability to pause and allow for your morals and your ethics that's built within you to get to you, that is a good thing. And that is something that pathological liars just don't have. We call this moral disengagement. Moral disengagement. Moral disengagement. I'm going to say moral disengagement causes you to have an easier time lying, right? Moral disengagement. I'm going to disengage from all of my ethics and morals. Pathological liars who often have personality disorders, who often lie multiple times to multiple people over multiple things, they have engaged in moral disengagement. They know how to disengage from their ethics, their principles, their boundaries, their values, and their morals. That's just who they are, right? And they don't seem to have a cognitive dissonance. They don't have that mental tension that most of us would have. The other thing is they have what's called low conscientiousness. Low conscientiousness. Let me make sure I spell conscientiousness correctly. Okay, we're going to try it. So low conscientiousness, which means low conscientiousness is low self-discipline and disregard for the rights of others. So disregard and low self-discipline. There you go. They have low conscientiousness. And that's what allows them to lie like they do. Another thing, guys, they also see most people I'm going to say they see people through a different lens. I'm going to put it that way. They see people through a different lens. Those of us who love and care and we have empathy and we have morals and ethics and boundaries, we see through the lens of, well, if that were me, I would prefer, or if that were me, I would want somebody to, or if that were me, right? So we know how to exercise empathy. We know how to care about other people. We know how to regard their rights, right? We would be individuals who have high conscientiousness where, we have self-discipline and we care for the rights of others. Pathological liars and habitual liars lack that. So it makes it really easy for them to lie. The other piece of this, which we're getting into now, is what is called dehumanization. Dehumanization. Pathological liars and habitual liars, they tend to dehumanize other people, which makes it a lot easier for them to lie. If they don't see you as a thinking, feeling human being, then it's going to make it really hard for them to lie, right? If they see you as a thinking, feeling human being. So what do they have to do? They have to dehumanize you over time. And so in their mind or through their lens, they dehumanize because that is the only way that they can lie. They have absolutely no debilitating guilt. For most of us, our guilt would eat us alive, right? For a pathological liar or a corrupt thinker, a criminal mind, there is no guilt. Why isn't there guilt? Because they have low conscientiousness. They have a total disregard for the rights of others. They have very, very low self-discipline, meaning they are impulsive. They do what they want. They don't care about you. And on top of that, they dehumanize you. And I hate to say this, they learn to dehumanize you. I'll put it that way. They learn to dehumanize you sometimes through very criminal and unstable family dynamics. A toxic or dysfunctional family dynamic reinforces sometimes criminal thinking, pathological lying, antisocial behavior, low conscientiousness, dark triad traits, which we talked about yesterday, right? Which would be psychopathy and narcissism and Machiavellianism. It's really, really sad. So a very corrupt criminal thinking or criminally behaving family dynamic reinforces that low conscientiousness, reinforces that Machiavellianism, reinforces the blurring of the ethics and morals that should be in a person's life. It all gets blurred to people who live in those very toxic family dynamics. Corrupt liars, they tend to become experts over time. They become experts over time. The more lies you tell, and the harder it is to stop those lies from coming out of your mouth, right? I'm sure you guys deal with this within your family, within your relationships. The more the person lies and the more their lies achieve what they want, the harder it is to undo that pattern of behavior. So they become experts over time. You know how you study to get a degree, or you study like you're doing on my channel, you learn things, you read things. It's kind of like that with liars. It's like they're reading out of a manual. Okay, the next time I'm confronted, this is what I'm going to say. That's not what it is. But there's a pattern of behavior that's continual, and that is the scary piece. What we just talked about, I'm going to go to the chat box in just a little bit. What we just talked about are core psychological elements. What were they, guys? Blurring of boundaries and principles, having a complex mix of criminal thinking, skewed thinking, and personality traits. On top of that, moral disengagement, cognitive dissonance, right, guys? Habitual lying, pathological lying, having low conscientiousness, very, very low self-discipline, right? They dehumanize you in order to continue the lies. There is absolutely no debilitating guilt. They don't have that experience, And on top of that, they become experts. So what we just talked about are core psychological elements that impacts a person who's a liar. That's how they function. There you have it. They function like that. And you know how sometimes you may be wondering, how can they lie so easily? Well, that's why. Dehumanization, criminal thinking, skewed perception of reality, personality traits, dehumanizing other people. And then they become experts on top of that. And they have absolutely no debilitating grief, guilt, shame, nothing, right? And so that's why they can lie over and over and over and over and do it again. It's a very sad reality, right? Yeah, it is awful. Okay, guys, let me go to the chat box, see what you guys are saying. I'm going to scroll through. I'm going to do this a little bit different tonight, just because I'm late and I want to be able to wrap up with you guys so we can get off at a decent time. I'm going to give you some challenges that you're likely to experience with these people, and then how to deal with them. You guys want to know how to deal with them, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about that tonight. Phoenix, it's good to see you, my friend. Welcome back tonight. You remember Avon. See, I'm not the only one who's over the age of 35 on this thing. I know, right? My mom, Phoenix, used to love, no. Let me take that back. My grandmother's friend, who became my mom's friend over time, used to love Avon. Okay. We hated it. My whole family, we hated it. Oh man. So wait a minute. Eco Life? I'm going to say that until you correct me. It's good to see you. Welcome back. Please don't mention the skin. Don't mention that. The Skin So Soft is awful. Oh my God. I used to hate that stuff. And you guys know those shower things, they like hang up on the shower hook. My grandmother used to have about 20 of those in front of the shower. And look, I learned real quick. Okay. I knew if I was going to spend a night with grandma, my guy, that it wasn't going to be Skin So Soft that I was going to be putting on. Okay. So what I started to do is I would buy my own body wash and I would pack it in my bag, and without my grandmother seeing it, I would confiscate it, okay, into the bathroom. She'd be talking to me and I'd be like, yep, okay, yep, I don't know what you're talking about. And I would literally take my own bubble bath in the bathroom. Guys, I'm just trying to make you laugh, but it's true. I would take my own bubble bath, shower, hurry up and hide it. And then my grandmother would be like, did you try that berry balm? Skin so soft. And I would be like, yeah, it was real nice. Yeah. All right, let me get serious here. I feel like we need to laugh at some pieces of this. You know what I mean? Shannon Duncan, hello, my friend. It's good to see you. Shannon Duncan says liars are uber defensive. Yes, they are. Yeah. They're defensive, right? Because they're not telling the truth and they know they're not. So they kind of have to shield themselves from questions, insight that you may have about them, different pieces of the puzzle that may come up for you to piece it together and see that they're lying. They have a lot to block, so they tend to walk around quite defensively. Not all of them, but some of them. Some of the research on pathological liars, you ready for this, also suggests that we don't have the answer always as to why they lie. We just know they're lying. We just know it's hard to deal with their lying. We also know that there's going to be grave consequences to some of their lying, but we don't always have the answer, guys. We don't always know why they lie. And so, that kind of makes it hard for us to study liars as well, because sometimes you can't tell what's truth, what's fiction, because it all blurs together, And after a person, again, has lied so much, it becomes this habitual lifestyle. And it sounds natural, doesn't it? Yeah, it's horrible. And Pulsar, it's good to see you. Welcome back. You remember Avon. Petite Sophisticate, hello, good to see you. Welcome back tonight. Jamal Obama, hello and welcome to the channel. Yes, Avon representatives, oh my God. They would call my mom's house all the time when we had what's called landline phones. And my mom would literally slam the phone down. Tessie in Yang 101. I hope I said that correctly. Welcome back, my friend. It's good to see you. Tessie in Yang 101 says, my daughter's dad abused me for 8 years and is facing charges and trying to use our daughter to get to me. It's super sad, but I'm strong. I'm so sorry to hear that. It sounds to me as if you're most likely dealing with a very complex individual. I won't say a narcissist, an antisocial personality, a sociopath, psychopath, but what I will say is he sounds complex just based on what you've given us. Hopefully, he's not trying to create this parental alienation, right? Where he looks like the better parent and you are not a good parent. It's hard, right? It's hard. And a lot of times within those kind of toxic dynamics, I get them so much in my office these days. At the core is often a variety of pathological lies. Your mom did this, your mom did that, your dad did that, your dad didn't do that, and it just kind of puts the kid in the middle. Oftentimes when I get these cases, this is what I say to them. You really have to care about your child more than you absolutely dislike anybody else, including each other. You know what I mean? And parents sometimes, it's like a light bulb moment. And sometimes they sit and you can see them thinking, oh my God, she's right. Right? Please love your child more than you need to cause this fight between you and your ex, say these ugly things with you and your ex, right? It's just not worth it. So I don't know. I wish that he could see it that way if he's the problem in the whole dynamic. Okay. Space Monk Music. I'm just going to post. I love that. I'm going to post this just so people can see it. It's good to see you. Welcome back tonight. I'm going to just put it up there so people can see it. I love it. I think it's a fantastic quote. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Jermaine, it's good to see you. Welcome back. It is called The Line Loop. Yep. Axe to Edge, it's good to see you. Welcome back tonight. Fairy Girl, always good to see you in the house. You're like the one who supports everybody's comments. You keep the chat kind of going. I love it. Joe Martinez, hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. Not sure what that's referring to, but I'm so sorry, my friend. Hang in there. Um, as you know, I had my own scare tonight, so we're on the same page. MNL Odell, it's good to see you. Welcome back tonight. NGO, it's good to see you as well. Tanisha's Heart Garden, it's so good to see you. Welcome back. Love when I see repeat people coming on here. My diehard buddies. Lil Johan, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Lil Johan says ADD creating conflict and devalue in there. Please, they will start an argument or fight with you so that they feel better. Okay, I'm not sure I understand what that means. I'm going to pull off of that, okay, Lil Johan. I'm going to say that some of the research in psychology tends to highlight that people with attention deficit disorder or children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they tend to often lie. There are some kids who have been diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the parents will often come to me if they're seeing me for therapy, and they'll ask me, is there a reason why he's lying so much now? Or they'll say, is there a reason why she's constantly making up stories? And I'll explain to them, sometimes kids who have ADHD or ADD, the automatic go-to is lying. That is just a part of the repertoire of behaviors. It's almost like a part of the symptoms, if you will. Sometimes they lie. Sometimes they become irritable and cranky and mean. Other times they have a hard time paying attention for long periods of time. They are constant seekers of excitement and stimulation. They can sometimes be highly impulsive. And sometimes that high impulsivity is what causes that high rate of lying. So, it's a little bit like a loop. So, Lil Johan, I'm just going to say, you mentioned ADD. A lot of times people with ADD who also lie, it goes neck and neck. It's a part of the symptoms. Now, I mean, talk about a complex web, okay? If we throw bipolar disorder on top of that, it becomes even more complex because adults can sometimes have what looks like core symptoms of ADD. But then if you look at the criteria for bipolar disorder, it also looks like it can add up there too. So it's a web. It's a web. It's a web. DC, it's good to see you. Welcome back. All right, let's keep moving. I'm going to go down. I'm not going to go back to the very beginning because I want us to wrap up here in just a little bit. Curtis Draper, Daywalker 23. I think I said hello to you, but I'm just going to say hello and welcome just in case I missed you. Tylene, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, I used to sell Avon. That's awesome. I feel like there needs to be an Avon support group for those of us who don't like the skin so soft, and the list goes on. It's good to see you, my friend. A and B, good to see you. Welcome back. Yeah, see? Yep. I'm glad I'm not alone in that. Ellie Wynn, did I say hello to you tonight? Welcome. It's good to see you. Gary Bennett, hello. Welcome back, my friend. Don't apologize. This was a really tough night for me. So it's good to just see you. You know what I mean? Some normalcy. Min Burton. Yeah, really. Oh my God. This is my grandmother who passed away in 2020. My late grandmother would love you for that. She would love you for that. Okay. Let's keep moving, guys. Okay, I want to make sure I get a good number of you in. Then we're going to go back to the content and wrap up. Oh, man. NGO, thank you so much for that. I've got to heart that comment. Thank you so much for that. That's the first thing that we go to when there is something that is out of our hands, and it's like, you do everything you can, right? And sometimes you do everything you can and still something happens. And sometimes you're just standing there like, oh my God, what do I do next, right? And sometimes that next thing that you should do next is pray, right? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Space Monk Music. I was just reading that. Thank you. I love that so much. I'm going to star that. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you, Space Monk Music. I appreciate you for that. Thank you. Okay, let's keep moving, guys. Okay. Mark Lee, hello and welcome. It's good to see you. Are you asking me that question, Mark Lee? Correct me, okay? I'm not sure what that means. Bring it back to me, okay? MNL Odell says you have to wonder why your friend felt the need to live so many lies. Exactly. Exactly. Well, her grandmother was severely mentally disabled. She had schizophrenia, which was chronic schizophrenia. She also had some symptoms of bipolar disorder. So she was being treated for bipolar disorder. Then her psychiatrist said, okay, it's not bipolar. So then he switched up her medicine and her treatment and diagnosed her with schizoaffective disorder. And then that wasn't the correct diagnosis because it was more psychosis than it was a mood disorder. And so then she was diagnosed with just chronic schizophrenia, or severe schizophrenia, I should say. And, I always had this gnawing in the back of my mind that said that she could be just as unstable, but in a very different way than her grandma. So that could be part of it. You never know. Captain Commenter, excuse me. It's good to see you, my friend. Welcome back. Captain Commenter says, I think my parents just got married and had kids to stupidly obey what society commanded them to do. Yeah. Some parents do. That was so well said. Yeah. Those are the kind of parents I stand back and I look at and think, you should never become a father or a mother because you're just going to destroy that child's life, even if you don't mean to. To me, that's the worst, right? They don't mean to destroy that child's life, right? But that's what they're doing with all of their behaviors, with all of their personality issues, with all of their bad relationships, It's really, really sad. My coworker just recently had a really bad case. He had to consult with me because mom had been supposedly engaged for the past 4 years, engaged to a man who committed murder and was released. And this is in the state of Florida. So that should make sense to you. Florida laws are a mess. Okay. But he killed someone. He served time and he was released for good behavior. Second assault, third assault, fourth assault, burglary, rape, the list goes on. And the 10th thing, he was violently attacking his family in their home. And mom continued on with the relationship, And I said to my coworker the other day, Captain Commenter, I said to her the other day, two of them. So there's a female and a male. The female I was talking to about this case, and I'm thinking, I don't know how do you digest all of that and work with a case like that, But my male coworker who has dealt with this case, he stated that she just continued living this life with this cold-hearted criminal. And even though he violently attacked them all the time, it was domestic violence. So domestic violence with mom, and then domestic violence with children. And she continued to stay with him no matter what, in addition to all of his lies. The list goes on. So, I just feel like mom shouldn't have been a mom if you're going to put your kids in a situation like that. So Captain Commenter, I totally get where you're coming from. Some people just should not be parents, right? I say that all the time. Fairy girl, thank you so much. That's sweet of you. Yeah. I know, right? Vitamins. I keep telling her, Mom, you can't take about 20,000 vitamins and then expect to be okay. You know what I mean? Without proper food and water and, you guys know how moms can be. DC says, Tam, you are describing my mother, the deceitful liar trying to cover up her lies. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard. I'm sorry you have a mom like that. Oh my God, it's so hard. All right, let's get back into the content. All right, guys, very briefly, okay, because I'm going to try to wrap up with us with the live chat in just a little bit here. What are the challenges? Ready? Psychology also backs this up. This is typical for pathological and compulsive liars, habitual liars. The first thing is lack of accountability. We all know that, right? They don't take responsibility for things. Lack of integrity. They don't have it, right? No, they seek reward, not integrity. They seek reward, not integrity. And that is a scary thing, right? They avoid specifics. You can try to get a pathological liar to be very specific about things. They're not going to be. They're not going to be, because they don't want to give you any room to pick and pull apart things. They don't want to give you any clues that they're lying, right? So they avoid specifics. There's also what we call emotional incongruence. Okay. I'm going to put that here. It's emotional incongruence. This is how I tell that some of the kids that see me for therapy, I know when they're lying to me. I know when they're lying to me, because here's what they do. And sometimes criminals do this too. They will tell you something, right? And they'll look at you a certain way. And boom, you know, right then and there, why are you looking at me like that? You want to see if I believe and I've digested and processed what you're telling me, don't you? Right? That's a piece of it. So I'm going to say emotional incongruence. Their emotion contradicts their lie. There you go. Emotional incongruence. Their emotion contradicts their lie. Sometimes kids will say to me, Miss Tamara, my mom kicked me last night. And they know that I'm going to have to just, toss up the coin and figure out, is this a child protective services thing or is this not? So if I have a kid say, Miss Tamara, my mom kicked me last night. You think I'm going to believe that? No, you're smiling. You're laughing. Your voice doesn't sound afraid. You don't sound hurt. None of it. You seem quite okay. So this is starting to sound a little vindictive rather than hurt, abused, neglected, right? Sometimes adults will do the same thing. They'll tell me their father just died. I had this so many years ago. Client sits in front of me, cracks up, literally laughing. I may have said something like, that's dad's for you. We were talking about the loss of her father. And she said, my dad used to do A, B, and C. And I said, oh, that's a typical dad. That's a typical dad for you. And she was laughing so hard that she looked like she was crying. That's how hard she was laughing. She said, I remember this time when he A, B, and C. And I said, those stories should keep your heart alive, even though he's gone. And you would think she would have said something like, yeah, that's so true. I'm going to hold on to that. No, she didn't say that. She was laughing and tearing up and telling jokes. And then when she finally calmed down from laughing so much, then she started talking about the inheritance and the money he said she may be attached to, and the home of her dad's that she's going to inherit. And so for me, it felt internally for me like she wasn't grieving. The emotion was contradictory. So there was emotional incongruence. You can sometimes find a liar in emotional incongruence. They blame, they minimize, they deflect. They blame, they minimize, they deflect. They have a sense of invincibility. A sense of invincibility. Isn't that scary, right? Research in psychology has confirmed that people who have high power, they often feel that they can lie. And they do more of the lying because they have power. So the more power, sometimes the bigger the lie. The more power a person has, the easier it is to lie. And that's a scary part, right? That's a scary part of the puzzle here. There's also strategic manipulation. I'm going to do A, B, and C. I'm going to tell her this. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that. And if she comes back at me to ask a question to clarify, I'm going to tell her this. Consider, for a liar, they are looking at a map. You look at a map, you roll out those old-fashioned ones, lay them on your desk, and you find where you want to go, and you can point out landmarkings in different states, right? Pathological liars and habitual liars do the same thing. They lay out their story, and they plot which direction they're going to go and when and how. And they do that sometimes far beyond the time that they communicate the lie to you. You know, consider it like a personality disorder. Pathological lying is really a symptom of a bigger issue, but it can feel very much like a personality disorder because sometimes the person can be simply depressed and be a pathological liar at the same time. You know, they could be anxious and have OCD and be a pathological or habitual liar all at the same time. So consider pathological, compulsive, habitual lying to be symptoms of a bigger picture. You know, some people, though, they can just present as liars. Now, what is that? Psychology doesn't have a specific definition or identification system for those people. You know, we usually fit those pathological and compulsive liars under a diagnosis, you know, and the diagnoses would be narcissism and sociopathy, psychopathy, or antisocial personality. It could also be paranoia, paranoid personality, schizoid, right? Schizotypal disorder. Those disorders may entail some form of lying, but again, it's a symptom and not necessarily an entity all of its own. I hope that makes sense. Let me also share this with you before we go to how to deal with it. Neuroscience. Neuroscience points out a really good piece of the puzzle here. Part of it is in the middle of our head, okay? It's the amygdala. If you look at the brain, let me give you a quick visual because we gotta wrap up here, guys. Excuse me. Okay, let me give you a quick visual. Our brain, okay, is suspended in cerebrospinal fluid. So it's not connected to anything. It's just floating in cerebral spinal fluid within the skull. Okay. The brain is kind of like a fist in a sense, right? If you do your fist this way, this is literally the shape of the brain. And in here, okay, would be the amygdala in this area here. And consider cutting this in half, cutting this in half. And what you get, this is so bad. What you get is this if you cut your hand in half. Okay. This is called the corpus callosum. And what happens in the corso callosum. Did I say that right, guys? I can't say it the second time. The corpus callosum is that little area in the brain. It separates both of the hemispheres. So let me write this out for you. So this is going to be is this going to be the right hemisphere? No. So this is going to be the left. It's too late for me. That's what it is. The left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Okay, so here's what it looks like. The corpus callosum. Okay, corpus callosum, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. Okay, whoa, slice it down the middle. That corpus callosum is like a really tight braid. That's what it looks like. It's a really tight braid. Information gets transferred between the left and the right hemisphere because of the corpus callosum. You know, think of this really interesting lightning thing happening. All those electrical signals are going left hemisphere, right hemisphere, left hemisphere between that area called the corpus callosum. And what's interesting is that research in psychology and neuroscience on pathological lying, the brain of people who engage in pathological lying, there tends to be limited to no spark happening, which means information is not being carried to the next part of the brain. Okay. Amygdala, it's an almond-sized structure. Underneath that corpus callosum, you know, you slice it in half. Right in here is the amygdala. Okay. The amygdala is an almond-sized structure within the brain. It carries our emotional memories, our emotional experiences, right? It kind of helps us to relive sometimes positive things and also sometimes negative things, so traumas. So the amygdala, there tends to be reduced activity in the amygdala, which means empathy could be suffering, which means, kind of reacting to things suffers a little bit. And the liar doesn't necessarily feel guilt, doesn't necessarily feel shame. How could they if there's an impact to those areas that sends information across the left and the right hemisphere? How can they if the amygdala has reduced activity? When you're having a flashback or an emotional memory, you think of that popcorn smell. You walk in a mall, you smell popcorn. Wow, it takes you back to being a child. That is a powerful experience there. The brain is connecting the dots and reminding you of a time. Pathological liars don't necessarily have that. They have reduced activity in the amygdala, which means they're lacking that ability to kind of associate the emotions with memories or emotions with experiences. The reduced activity makes it a little easier to lie because they're not as emotional. They're not really experiencing guilt. They're not really able to process that their lie could harm somebody. They're not thinking about what they just said 2 hours ago that was a lie. All of that is kind of not happening in the amygdala. Another part of the brain, guys, that's highly important is the prefrontal cortex. It's right behind your forehead. Impulsivity is there. Decision making, right? Some components of personality, strategic consideration of things. That is minimal when it comes to pathological liars and habitual liars. They actually have issues with executive functioning, right? That's sad, right? So there's some brain stuff going on with pathological and habitual liars. Okay, briefly, how do you deal with this? You ready, guys? Research in psychology, and I've also experienced this and been trained over many, many years in a variety of contexts to utilize these tools with liars. One thing is approach them strategically, not emotionally. Approach them strategically, not emotionally. This is where people go wrong. The minute they start to feel lied to, they get emotional. How dare you say that to me? Or you're lying and you know you're lying. Or what do you think? I'm stupid, right? There's emotion in that. Don't do that. The number one thing you want to do, approach them strategically, not emotionally. You got to figure out what that is and how to use that. Disrupt that lying loop, that habitual lying loop. How can you disrupt it? Don't play into it. Don't give it any life. Don't give it any emotion. Don't give it any attention. So anytime that I am dealing with a client who has a very criminally developed mind and they think that everybody believes them and everything that they're selling, I used to have an attitude of, I'll listen to this, I'll nod, I'll let you think that I believe you. And then as soon as you're done talking, I'm going to come back around this loop again. And I'm going to ask you to recount what you just told me. And it's interesting how details shift, right? Because if you're lying, you have to have a really good memory. You have to be able to go back and pull things to the forefront. And if you have poor executive functioning, and if you have an underactive amygdala, it's going to be really hard to remember. And so sometimes I will let somebody talk until they're blue in the face or they think I'm believing them. And then I'll go back and I'll say something like, wait a minute, let me go back to something for a second. Did you just say? And sometimes the liar will pause and say, well, what I meant was, well, no, what I was saying was, wait a minute, what are we talking about again? And then that's when you know this is not adding up, is it? Become unpredictable. That's really good with kids who lie too. Be unpredictable. They tell you something, they're lying. Be unpredictable. Oh, I see. Well, you know what? I need you to do this for me right now. Totally change the subject. Don't get as angry in response to pathological liars. That makes you unpredictable. That pathological liar doesn't know what they're going to see in you, right? You can switch up your behavioral responses. That'll make it really difficult for them to continue the lie. Don't engage their lies. That's not good. Like, you don't want to reinforce the lie, because when you do that, then you're giving it life, and it gives the pathological liar, habitual liar, rope to work with, and that's what they need. And sometimes they just continue until they're caught, or they wrap themselves in that rope. But what I would do is don't engage. I find that to be the most successful thing. Don't argue facts. If you know deep down intuitively they're lying, or facts don't add up or match up, don't argue. There's no need to argue with a truthful person. If you feel the need to argue facts, you know they're lying. You can kind of feel that on the inside. Follow through with boundaries. Follow through with boundaries. You have to. The more you follow through with boundaries with a liar, especially if it's a family member, the least they're going to come to you. Or I'll put it this way, they're not going to come to you with as many lies as maybe they do other family members, because they know you're going to follow through with boundaries. You're going to hold them accountable. You're going to catch them in a lie. Oh my God. You're going to do sorry guys. You're going to do something that is unpredictable, right? Or you're going to approach them strategically and not emotionally, and they don't know how to handle that, right? Avoid the drama. Liars like to pull you into the drama. They like to cause a volcano. They like to cause a tornado. They like to be loud and histrionic and dramatic, because what does that do? That takes the attention off of the lie and puts it on to something else. So don't get sucked into the drama. And in certain cases, it's okay. I think some people feel like you shouldn't call out a liar, and other people feel like, yeah, call out a liar. You want to be somewhere in the middle. And you want to intuitively discern, is this the kind of person I need to call them out? And is this going to make a big difference? Or is this the kind of person I'm going to call out and they shut down and don't talk to me at all? Right? And we're still getting nowhere. So you want to be a little bit in the middle, kind of fill out where you are. We're going to talk more about this. Okay, guys, stay tuned for Tuesday. I'm going to talk about dramatic personalities, really the psychology of how dramatic people play games with you. You're going to want to know that, because for me personally and professionally, I have seen dramatic people, and they're looking for a variety of responses from you. And you have to be aware of what those are. So we're going to talk about that on Tuesday. All right, guys. So come see me then. I'm literally going to scroll through some of these comments, guys. And I'm so sorry that I can't get to every last one of these comments. But I do want to engage you just a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Okay. Air Force to Civilian Chronicles. It's good to see you. Welcome. Air Force to Civilian Chronicles says, how do you address patients in your practice when you catch them lying, especially when they insist that they aren't lying? It must be a real challenge. Thank you for that question. It is a really big challenge. It has been a process of what's the word I'm looking for? What's that term I'm looking for? Oh, it's leaving me. I can't do YouTube at this time of night, guys. It's a process. There we go. It's a process of trial and error. And it has been, when I was a baby in the field, I didn't understand liars. I didn't realize that you can't always address them with what you know to be truth, because really what you want is not to call them out for the sake of calling them out and saying you're a liar. What you want from them is conversation, right? You want them to open up the door to what's really going on. And you can't get somebody to do that if you call them out and embarrass them and make them feel like an idiot, right? And you also can't be in denial or act too passive with them, because they think that they are winning and they are gaining on you and they can do whatever they want. So you really do have to strike that balance. And now that I'm considered seasoned in my profession, I recognize that now. I totally get that. So it was a process of trial and error over time. It was a hard one. Yeah, it was a hard one. Jermaine says, their family reinforces those things. And we're talking about the criminal thinking, the skewed reality, the personality traits. I think that's what you're talking about. The criminal behaviors, the premeditation, the strategic thinking, the calculating, all of that. Yeah. M&L Odell says a whole lot of monsters, and sadly, we've enabled them. I totally agree. Totally agree. Faith, hello and welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. It's good to have you. Faith says, my whole family is committed to the false lies of the narc, abusive family, hence no contact. Yep. Yeah. Sometimes you do have to go no contact too, because you just can't get them to open up, right? You can't get them to be truthful and honest. DC says, I knew my childhood, and family were jacked up, but now I realize it's worse than I thought. Oh God, I hope it's not these chats. Maybe it is, and maybe that's a good thing, right? Because you can kind of see, maybe piece some things together. At least I hope so. That's my hope. Brandy Nuance, it's good to see you, my friend. Glad you were able to join us tonight. I hear my mom up there listening to YouTube. Oh, that's such a good sign. My mom is a whole YouTube fan, okay? She has her whole YouTube account, and I hear her up there with it. I always like to hear that when I'm down here working, because that shows me that she's not still sick, like she's getting better, if that makes sense. Tessie in Yang 101 says, you don't realize him till you realize you're not a part of the same spiritual mental process you have grown. 100%. 100%. That's how you know you've healed too. Yeah. Space Monk Music says, Tamara, can you do a role play? Absolutely not. What are we talking about here? I'm kidding. Okay. Space Monk Music says, Tamara, can you do a role play as a person who thinks this way? I think it'd be helpful to illustrate the mindset of a person in a hypothetical scenario. I'm so sorry. I would have, but I don't know what we're talking about. The pathological liar. Is that what we're saying? Come back at me with that, okay? I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know what I was talking about at the time where I could give you a hypothetical. Forgive me. This has been a rough night, guys, as you know. Dr. Right Life, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Dr. Right Life says they tell you what they think you want to hear to get something like approbation or attention or power control from you. Yeah. My grandfather, who is my late grandfather, he passed away in December of last year. He was a pastor of over 30 years, and he did a lot of studying, a lot of learning. And this is what he said to me once as I was growing up. He says, when something evil wants to overtake you, if it's evil within a person, if it's evil in, an evil dynamic, what is the one thing that it has to do? Well, he said, it has to look the part, sound the part, smell the part, be the part in order to pull you in, right? So it's like feeding a bunch of bees honey, and they're going to fly around all of that honey and they're going to enjoy it. But the sad reality of that is they don't know what's lurking behind, and it's going to harm them. But you have to look the part, smell the part, be the part in order for it to be accepted and attractive. And once you're in, that's when you're going to see the truth or the reality of a situation. And so I used to, look at my grandfather and think, that's kind of deep, Grandpa. I agree with that one. So yeah, to your point, Dr. Right Life. All right. Tetsujin. If I'm saying that wrong, please forgive me. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. I'm so glad that this channel has been helpful and hopefully interesting these past couple of weeks. They say that I am the child of a schizoaffective mother, and I, oh God, got pregnant a narcissist, and she's withholding my child from me. Now I have to navigate co-parenting with her. Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand. That's going to be a nightmare if they are a true narcissist, right? Because so many people think a narcissist is over there, and back there. And that's not the case. But if she's a true narcissist, I truly, truly hope that she puts the baby first, right? I'm sorry you have to go through that. That's a headache. Messengers, the minister. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. It's good to have you. He says, these types despise those who call those behaviors out. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes they'll shut down. That's why you really got to be careful with showing up and calling out a pathological liar. One more comment, guys. One more comment. Okay. Then we got to run. Oh my God. Petite sophisticate. See, you're right. It was good against mosquitoes. I hate to say that. That was the only reason I used it. And I'm telling you, that's the only reason. No, I'm kidding. Give it a think. We're going to end on you, okay? You make a very good point. You say sometimes lying is a survival skill. Let me break that down just for a second, then we'll wrap up. Yes, think about it. Lying. I lie to keep my image, right? I lie to look more important than I need to look, or than I should be trying to look. I lie to keep money in my bank account, food on my table. Right? I lie to get some kind of social reward. And I live a lie so I don't have to deal with pain. Right? I tell myself lies because I can't face reality. And sometimes I lie on others because I'm bored, I'm empty, or there's a void that is not filled. And that is the reality of that. Sometimes liars lie for survival. And when we think of survival, you want to think of psychological survival, emotional survival, psychological survival. Yeah. Isn't that sad? It's awful. Give it a think. You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to actually star that comment in the comment or the chat center or the chat box. Guys, thank you for being with me tonight. I'm sorry I couldn't come and be my jovial self at 7:30 tonight. But I really appreciate you for signing on. And I hope you got something from this live chat. Stay tuned. We're going to talk more about this. I hope you enjoy your Saturday, rest of your Saturday and your Sunday. And I'll see you soon. Good night, guys. And thank you so much for your care and concern tonight. Have a good night, guys.